Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content. Subscribe and turn on notifications. My wife was standing under a wall of LED screens at CES, smiling like she owned the future, when her CO boyfriend looked me dead in the face and said, "You wouldn't understand this room, Adrian. This is where people who build tomorrow talk." Then my wife laughed. Not nervous laughter. Not awkward laughter. The kind that comes from thinking someone is already beneath you. She lifted her champagne glass, tilted her head, and said, "He still thinks AI is just good code and hard work. He has no idea how this world actually works." There were investors around them. Reporters. Founders. People wearing badges that cost more than my first monthly rent. And all of them smiled politely, like I was the joke they didn't want to laugh too loudly at. What neither of them knew was that 17 minutes earlier, while they were on stage hyping their company, I had signed the final documents to acquire controlling interest in their startup. So I let them talk. I let them enjoy it. Because when people believe they've already won, they stop being careful. My name is Adrian Cole. I'm 39, an engineer by training, a founder by accident, and for most of my adult life, the kind of man people called solid when what they really meant was boring. I was fine with that. I wasn't the loud guy in the room. I wasn't polished like the venture crowd or magnetic like the startup celebrities who could turn a vague idea into a 9-figure valuation with a keynote and a black turtleneck. I built things that worked. 10 years earlier, I co-founded a computer vision company in a cramped warehouse outside San Jose. We sold it for enough money that I never had to chase status again. Not private jet money. Not yacht money. Just enough to live well, invest carefully, and stop confusing noise with achievement. That was around the time I met Lena. She was sharp, beautiful, socially fearless, the kind of person who could walk into a room of strangers and leave with 3 offers and 5 invitations. Where I was measured, she was electric. At first, I loved that about her. We got married 3 years later. When generative AI started exploding, Lena became obsessed with the space. She said this was the next gold rush, that the winners wouldn't just make money, they'd shape culture. She wanted in. That's when Ethan Voss entered our lives. Ethan was 32, Stanford polished, magazine handsome, and completely fluent in the language of ambition. He talked fast, dressed like every panel discussion was a photo shoot, and had a gift for making half-finished products sound revolutionary. He came to us with an AI retail analytics startup called Nurexis. Computer vision, predictive modeling, consumer behavior mapping, all wrapped in sleek branding and big promises. He wanted Lena to lead partnerships and brand strategy. He wanted me as a quiet technical advisor and early investor. Lena pushed hard for it. "Adrian, this is exactly your world," she told me one night at our kitchen island. "You understand the infrastructure. I understand the market. Ethan can raise. This is perfect." So I put in the seed money. Not a fortune, but enough to matter. Enough to get them off the ground. I also licensed a piece of inference optimization architecture from one of my old patents into the company under a very specific agreement. If Nurexis ever defaulted on certain obligations, control over that IP could snap back through the holding structure I owned. At the time, it just felt prudent. I had no idea that clause would become the blade that saved me. For the first year, everything looked good. Lena was energized. Ethan was everywhere. Podcast appearances, glossy interviews, social clips, investor dinners. Nurexis raised a flashy round and suddenly people were calling it a $45 million startup. But inside my own house, things changed. Lena became distant in small ways first. She stopped telling me details about her day. She took calls on the balcony. Her phone started living face down. She went from saying to saying, the company, like I had never been part of its story. Then came the contempt. If I questioned their burn rate, I was old school. If I warned that enterprise pilots weren't the same as real adoption, I was thinking too small. If I asked why customer retention was weak, Lena would sigh and tell me I didn't understand modern growth. That phrase started showing up a lot. You don't understand. You're not in it every day. This isn't your world anymore. The first time I truly felt something was wrong, we were at a dinner with 2 of their investors. Ethan made a joke about dead weight legacy talent, then looked right at me when everyone laughed. Lena didn't defend me. She squeezed his forearm under the table like it was automatic. That image stayed with me. A month later, I found proof. Not because I was snooping. Because careless people get lazy. Lena and I shared an old iPad we used mostly for home stuff, travel bookings, grocery lists, contractor invoices. She had never logged out of her business email on it. I was in the kitchen paying our property tax when a preview banner slid across the screen. From Ethan. Suite booked for Vegas. Same as last time. Don't worry, he still thinks I need space. I stared at it for a full 10 seconds before opening the thread. There was weeks of messages. Hotel confirmations. Private jokes about me. Plans for after CES. One line I still remember word for word because it changed everything. Once he signs the amended licensing release, he's irrelevant personally and legally. Personally and legally. Not just cheating. Strategy. I kept reading. They had been trying to pressure me into signing an updated IP release buried inside a governance packet Ethan had sent over 3 days earlier. The new language would have stripped the protections around the licensed architecture and converted my secured position into a passive advisory footnote. They weren't just sleeping together. They were trying to erase me. I didn't confront her. Not then. I sent the entire email thread to a private address. Then I called my attorney, Mara. Then a forensic accountant. Then an old contact at the venture debt firm Nurexis had borrowed from 6 months earlier. Within 48 hours, I had a full picture. Their numbers were weaker than the press releases suggested. Cash burn was brutal. Their major enterprise pipeline was mostly non-binding pilots. The board was nervous. The debt facility had teeth. And the company's most valuable technical assets still flowed through agreements they needed me to release. That was the moment the hurt cooled. I stopped wanting an apology. I started wanting clarity. So while Lena was busy packing for CES and pretending we were simply going through a rough patch, I became very easy to underestimate. I slept in the guest room. I answered calmly. I signed nothing. I let her think I was too stunned to move. Behind the scenes, Mara began locking down my personal exposure. We separated accounts. We documented timelines. We preserved every message. I quietly bought a slice of the company's debt through an intermediary, then opened discussions with the most frustrated board members. Ethan had spent 2 years selling a future he couldn't quite deliver. I didn't need to destroy him. I just needed to stop him from lying long enough for reality to catch up. By the time CES started in Las Vegas, the company was desperate for a fresh strategic deal. Ethan thought the conference would save him. He had meetings stacked back to back. Press lined up. Demo theater booked. Lena was glowing again because public admiration always worked on her like a drug. I flew in separately. She told people we were taking some time. Ethan told people I was a legacy advisor. In private, they acted like I was already gone. Then came that party. The one where Ethan mocked me. The one where Lena joined in. I remember the exact sound of her laugh more clearly than I remember my wedding vows. Ethan stepped closer, one hand in his pocket, the other holding his glass. You know what your problem is, Adrian? You confuse invention with value. Nobody cares who built the engine if someone else knows how to sell the car. Lena smirked. That's why some people stay in the garage. There was public. True. I nodded once. You should enjoy tonight, I told them. Ethan grinned. Oh, I plan to. I know, I said. Then I walked away. At 9:40 p.m., while they were hosting a private investor dinner in a suite at the Venetian, the board received the signed acquisition package. At 9:52, I was invited upstairs. When I walked in, Ethan looked annoyed. Lena looked confused. The room was full of board members, counsel, 2 investors, and a banker who suddenly found the carpet fascinating. Ethan stood. This is a closed session. No, said board chair Rebecca Lynn, without even looking at him. It isn't. Mara placed a folder in front of each person at the table. Rebecca folded her hands. As of 15 minutes ago, Mr. Cole, through Cole Strategic Holdings, acquired the outstanding secured debt position and executed a control transaction approved by the board. Pending final administrative filings, he is now the controlling owner of Nurexis. For a second, nobody moved. Then Ethan laughed. Actually laughed. That's not possible. Mara slid the signature pages across to him. It's already done. Lena turned to me so fast her chair hit the table. You did this? I met her eyes for the first time all day. You were trying to get me to sign away the underlying architecture while sleeping with the CEO. Did you really think I was going to stay passive? Her face drained. Ethan started talking over her. This is retaliation. This is personal. This is insane. Rebecca's voice cut through him like wire. No, Ethan. What's insane is presenting inflated forward revenue while negotiating around undisclosed conflicts and material governance concerns. He froze. That got his attention. I took out my phone, opened the screenshots, and placed it on the table. I brought proof, I said. Not because I need revenge. Because the company deserves truth. Lena whispered, Adrian? No, I said, calm enough that even I surprised myself. You don't get to use my name like that right now. Nobody said anything. I looked at Ethan. You wanted me irrelevant personally and legally. Instead, you made yourself replaceable commercially and exposed operationally. He lunged for the easiest defense. You can't run this company. I almost smiled. I don't need to be the face of it. I just need to be the adult in the room. Rebecca asked Ethan for his badge and device access. Company counsel asked Lena to remain available pending an internal investigation into misuse of company funds and disclosure failures. She looked at Ethan then, really looked at him, maybe for the first time without the halo of ambition around him. And what she saw was a man who could charm a room, but not save her. The fallout was slower than the confrontation, but much more satisfying. Ethan was terminated within a week. Once the internal audit began, more cracks opened. Vendor invoices tied to personal travel. Inflated pipeline language. Selective reporting to the board. Nothing dramatic enough for a movie arrest scene, but more than enough to destroy his reputation in an industry built on trust theater. Lena resigned before she could be formally removed. Her divorce attorney came in aggressive. Mine came in prepared. The affair mattered less legally than the financial overlap and the paper trail around the attempted licensing revision. She stopped acting indignant once she realized how much documentation existed. A strange thing happened after that. People who had ignored me started calling me disciplined. Investors who had once chased Ethan's charisma started praising my steadiness. Employees I barely knew began thanking me for not shutting the company down. That part mattered most. Because despite everything, there were good people at Nurexis. Engineers working late because they believed in the product. Analysts trying to do honest work inside a dishonest culture. Kept them. Cut the vanity spending. Brought in an actual operator as CEO. Simplified the roadmap. 16 months later, the company was smaller, quieter, profitable, and finally real. As for Lena, the last thing she said to me in person was, "You didn't have to humiliate me." We were in a conference room signing final divorce papers. I looked at her and realized I felt nothing sharp anymore. No rage. No ache. Just distance. I said. I just stopped protecting you from the consequences of what you chose. That was the truth. And truth, when it finally arrives, doesn't usually scream. It settles. These days, my life is smaller than the one I used to live with her, and better in every way that counts. I sleep well. I trust my own instincts again. I don't explain my value to people who only respect performance when it comes with applause. Sometimes I still think about that night at CES. The lights. The laughter. The certainty on their faces. If I'm honest, that moment used to feel like the worst kind of humiliation. Now it feels like a gift. Because that was the night they showed me exactly who they were. And it was the night I decided I would never again confuse being quiet with being weak. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one.